third basic guitar myth is, and I get this all the time, and this is the one people love to argue about, and the one that people disagree with the most. There's this, I even hate to say it, but it's a misconception. It's really not true. That, oh, your guitar is going to have more sustain if it's a neck through as opposed to a bolt on, as opposed to a set neck. Be honest with you, the truest statement that a person could say in that situation is, it is completely situational which one of those guitars will have the best sustain. Meaning, you may put together this neck through guitar and it may have great sustain. But it is also possible that you could put together a neck through guitar and it not have as much sustain as this bolt neck guitar that I put together. And I can confidently say that because I've watched enough reviews online and I've watched enough people trying to prove this theory to be true to see that there were enough instances where it wasn't true to say, well, that's not really across the board a true statement. It's obviously situational based upon the individual instrument. And that is true. There's no arguing. There is no arguing that there have been cases where a bolt-on guitar has sustained better than a neck through. Does every bolt-on sustain better than a neck through? Of course not. That would be ridiculous. But it's also equally ridiculous to say that every neck through will sustain better than a bolt-on. These are generalized statements that were made because of something that someone witnessed or someone saw or someone heard. But when people have tried to replicate this to prove it right or wrong, the tests that they've done don't really necessarily reflect the same outcome. Actually, they've been very inconsistent, and there've been very inconsistent conclusions drawn from that. So if the conclusion isn't consistent, the only thing that you can draw from that is this is definitely a case-by-case scenario. It's not anything that you can say just above the board, this one does this and this one doesn't do that. Also, in that exact same realm, people have said, oh, well, you know, a multi-piece guitar body won't sustain and resonate as good as a one solid piece. And I actually watched a review where someone took an Epiphone guitar, which that they knew were multiple pieces, and then they took a Gibson, which they knew was one piece, and they were going to prove that the cheaper Epiphone guitar would not sustain as long as the more expensive Gibson. They had to do the test 3 times, and and they only kept doing it because they weren't getting the result that they wanted. But all 3 results showed that the Epiphone was out-sustaining the Gibson. Now, does that mean every Epiphone will out-sustain every Gibson? No. But what that means is the resonance of each individual instrument is unique unto that instrument. Meaning, you could pull an instrument off the wall, hit a note and go, oh my God, this thing sustains forever. But you cannot look at the brand name on that instrument, you cannot look at the model of that instrument, and you cannot look at the manufacturing of that instrument and say, that is why it's sustaining. And then buy any other instrument just like it and expect to get the exact same outcome. Should it happen that way? Yes. All logic dictates that if you replicate everything, then you should get the same result. But with musical instruments, it just doesn't work that way. You can replicate everything exactly. But the simple fact of the matter is that you pull 5 instruments off an assembly line and you play them. And those 5 instruments usually will not play exactly the same. Now, as manufacturing's gotten better and tolerances have gotten narrower, the differences between the instruments is getting very, very small. But the differences are still there. So, the thing to remember is that how well a guitar will sustain. Um, if a bolt-on neck has a really tight, very good, high-quality neck pocket, which is what you're going to get on a Sir or a Nash or a LRL or anything like that. If that neck pocket is tight enough, then it won't lose sustain. Now, I'm talking about the sustain that you can actually hear. Now, if we hook it up to some sort of machine that can uh, measure the sound wave, and when the sound wave tapers completely off, I have no doubt in my mind that the neck thru would quite possibly win that. I'm not 100% sure because I've never done it, but I'm quite sure it would. But we're talking about sound at a level, not what can be seen on a meter, but what can actually be heard by the human ear. And as far as what can be heard by the human ear, it has not been 100% proven that a neck thru sustains better than a bolt-on guitar. At the most part, most of the ones that I've seen where they have been able to prove it have been someone taking an expensive neck thru and a cheap bolt-on, and then go and see it does. But see, that cheap bolt-on has a bad neck pocket, and that's why it doesn't sustain. It's just put together bad with not quality pieces. You know what I mean? It's like a crappy bridge with pot metal and a bad neck joint. And you go, oh, it doesn't sustain. Well, I'm not surprised it doesn't sustain. It's a piece of crap. But anyway, enough of that.